Mayor Daley was the keynote speaker at the annual meeting of the Chicago Alliance to End Homelessness, where he talked about the progress of Chicago's plan to end homelessness, which began in 2003. The mayor, Commissioner Mary Ellen Caron, and Nancy Radner, CEO of the Chicago Alliance to End Homelessness, talked about how the recession has led to an increase in homelessness and the city's response to it.
I just want to thank the Chicago Alliance to End Homelessness. Nancy's done a tremendous job for many, many years, working with government, educating government about this, bringing forth not-for-profits that have really worked in a constructive way in regards to end homelessness, and not just issuing reports and studies or just talking about it. She has really helped in regards to implementation of the Chicago Plan to End Homelessness. And I pointed out earlier today that they had many corporate sponsors, which they need more people getting involved, because it's not just Chicago, now it's a metropolitan area, it's rural areas. I've talked to mayors in the suburban area. They have like 5 or 6 families, and they don't know how to deal with it. Out of maybe more than that, 15, 20 now, what they're seeing. And many communities all over the metropolitan area, even in rural areas. You know, people have lost their homes, people have lost their jobs. And so this is the human side. I call it the Great Recession. This is not an average recession. This is a much more serious recession we've ever seen as compared to the history. And we in government must understand that. But most important, you need organizations like this to really keep you accountable and also give you ideas and opinions, what works and what doesn't work. And that includes both local, that includes state, county, state, and the federal government. Many programs are started, but how are they implemented? How are they get out there into the community, which I talked about earlier, and that is a major, major issue. And this is a very complex issue, but at the same time, the mission is to save an individual and their family from homelessness, and even if they're in it, to rebuild their lives and take them out of there. At the same time, shelters, a lot of cities went to shelters, and they thought that was the answer. But if you have shelters without social services or permanent housing and a job and rebuilding their lives, much of it was just putting people in housing, and that was all. And that failed across the country. And so as I spoke just recently, at their breakfast, they have this annual breakfast, which is tremendous, and I encourage more and more of the media to come there and talk to not only former homeless, but not-for-profits and social agencies that are out there that Nancy has worked very hard throughout not only the city, the metropolitan area. In 2003, with her, they established the Plan to End Homelessness in Chicago, but it basically is a plan that other cities are adopting because of their input all over the country. And of course, metropolitan mayors are looking at it because of the foreclosure crisis in a community where the landlord is being foreclosed, the tenants lose their houses, or someone's losing their home. And between Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the banks, there's thousands and thousands of homes being foreclosed, not only in Chicago, but in the metropolitan area. So our core principles remain the same as they always have been. Prevention, getting people housed, providing services to keep them housed. One of the keys is providing services and putting them on a path to a better life. And Mary Ellen Caron has done a tremendous job in the Department of Family and Support Services. And of course, Jim Lobianco, our Deputy Commissioner, is out on the street continually working with non-for-profit and other organizations, and then dealing with the homelessness on the street. And to me, our core mission has always been, we can do a better job. I think Chicago and America, in this great recession, I call it the great, have to do a much better job in regards to helping the less fortunate. And the less fortunate are growing because of the economic crisis that no one ever foresaw that this is happening to even middle-class families or upper-middle-class families. Since 2003, we've added more than 2,800 units of permanent housing, specifically for homeless individuals and families, to our system. That has to increase. You have to have permanent housing. You just can't move people, so you're going to be here for 6 months or a year or 2 years, then you're going someplace else. You have to give them, when they rebuild their lives, you have to say, this is your home. This is what you wanted. We have created more than 700 units of permanent supportive housing for chronically homeless individuals. As a result of our long-term commitment to end homelessness, we have documented a reduction in the number of homeless individuals and families in every federally required count since 2003. But now, even though we're still at some of the lowest numbers since the beginning of the plan to end homelessness, the effect of the national economic recession can clearly be seen on the street. Foreclosed homes, you can see it both in the city, suburban, and in rural areas. Through 2008 and into 2009, about 12% of the city's shelter beds were vacant. Today, less than 5% are vacant now. From January to June of 2009, we have served 7.5% more households with shelter, interim housing than we did in the same period in 2008. So that whole area is growing tremendously. In this winter, you'll see, the fall and the winter, you'll see more and more growing. Especially in times like this, it is the responsibility of government. I'm talking about local government, county, state, and federal government to use every available tool to help those who need our help the most during this serious recession. When I announced our 2010 budget, I knew that some people would say that we hadn't cut enough spending on our employees, or that some people would say we should raise taxes, and people are saying you should raise taxes and fees. But this is not the time to cut essential services. It's not the time to ask people to pay higher taxes or fees or costs of government. It's time to support people who need our help, even those who are working to develop new ways to get Chicago's economies going. So my budget keeps its strong commitment to end homelessness. In the 2010 budget, we proposed using $1.4 million from the Parking Meter Human Infrastructure Fund. And that's what's called. It's called a human infrastructure. That's what the purpose is. It's called a rainy day fund, and you use it when it rains. And this could be examples of flood, more than a flood in America, to expand support for the homeless. $700,000 will be used to increase capacity at homeless shelters by about 28,000 additional nights of shelter and supportive services. Another $700,000 will be used as part of the plan to end homelessness to maintain funding for permanent housing placement, case management, rental assistance, job assistance, other supportive services for more than 1,000 homeless or at-risk individuals or their families. In addition to the Federal American Recovery Reinvestment Act, the city is distributing about $41 million over the next 2 or 3 years to help address the challenges of homelessness. We'll use the money to help people pay their utility bills or rent, broaden our prevention services, add beds to our interim housing program. The city's Department of Family and Supportive Services has established a partnership with the Chicago Public Schools, a pilot program called the Homeless Student Support Initiative. This new program is aimed at fostering a stable home life for CPS families at risk of homelessness. Will allow us to serve about 500 Chicago Public Schools students and their households. In short, I believe our plan is working. Even in the face of the worst economic times, most of us can remember, and our commitment to it remains as strong as ever, and we have to recommit ourselves. And I really thank all those that have been involved in the effort, especially of the Chicago Alliance and Homelessness. This is a great organization. I encourage anyone out there who want to give a contribution, a charitable contribution, you should look at this organization. They're the ones who get it done. They're the ones who advocate, besides that, are very constructive about, okay, let's do this, let's go on this path. And they're willing to say something doesn't work. If it doesn't work, let's change the course. And I think that is, to me, that is the key that we have to have in this fight against homelessness. And everybody should take it. It could be your father, it could be your mother, it could be your brother or sister. It could be your neighbor. It could be someone that you know that you don't realize who they are. And many times homeless people are just totally embarrassed. Their life has been collapsed. In America, we don't allow someone to collapse. We have a reaching hand out there to pull them up, and that's what we're trying to do. Thank you.
As Mayor Daley stated on January 27th, from 9 p.m. until 2 a.m., the Chicago Department of Family and Support Services coordinated the city's biannual 2009 point-in-time count. The count was conducted in partnership with the Chicago Alliance to End Homelessness, which the mayor just spoke of, and homeless service providers throughout the city, other city departments and sister agencies, which included the Park District, CTA, the Chicago Housing Authority, as well as the University of Illinois at Chicago, and other agencies throughout the city. The point-in-time count serves many purposes. First, the results provide valuable numerical and demographic data on the Chicago homeless population that help shape and improve our programs and services. Secondly, the findings help us chart our progress in reducing and eliminating homelessness via the Plan to End Homelessness. Finally, the count is a federal requirement for all municipalities that receive funding for homeless programs from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD. The 2009 count and survey of homeless people in Chicago utilizes HUD's definition of homelessness that is specific to people who are literally homeless. This includes people who are staying in emergency and transitional shelters, as well as those who reside in public space. This year, our count also enumerated households living in apartment-based programs that provide 2-year rental subsidy. The count does not include families or individuals who are doubled up in apartments or people residing in corrections or other institutions. In 2009, we documented 884 living on the street, 4,286 in emergency shelters and interim housing, and 1,070 in the apartment-based rental subsidy programs. We compared 2009 to the 2007 count. The number of unsheltered homeless people declined, and the number of people in emergency and interim housing programs remained the same, for an overall reduction of 10%. The number of people found on the streets, in parks, abandoned buildings, and on CTA trains declined by 38%. Adults and children residing in emergency shelter and interim housing programs were down 1%. As I stated earlier, this year we included permanent housing with short-term supports. This model, which had 1,070 adults and children in this kind of housing on the night of the count. When we include this program in the overall comparison, we show an increase of 5% between 2007 and 2009. We feel that the 2009 point-in-time count results show signs of progress in addressing street homelessness and even maintaining low numbers in shelter and interim housing program in light of the economic crisis that has been growing over the past year. As a reminder, between 2005 and 2007, we documented an overall decrease of 12%, including a 9% decrease in street homelessness and a 13% decrease in sheltered homelessness. However, since January, our department has experienced a rise in the demand of services both for prevention and shelter. Calls to the Homeless Prevention Call Center hit an all-time high of 9,000 calls in the month of June. Shelter utilization has increased steadily throughout the year and now is at 99%. The rise in demand for services clearly reflects the stress of the recession on households already living on the margins. This only reaffirms our vision that the most important resources at this time are prevention and housing. The federal government shares this vision, which is why they included funding in the ARRA, which is the stimulus package, to strategically address new homelessness and prevent future reoccurrences. In Chicago, $34 million will be distributed through the Stimulus Homeless Prevention and Rapid Rehousing Program beginning in the middle of November. This funding will support households who are either requesting shelter or are within weeks of losing their rental housing, and who are also 50% of the average median income. Now that is $37,770,000 annually for a family of 4. The Homeless Prevention and Rapid Rehousing Program will actually allow us to bring to scale several of the key programs initiated through the Plan to End Homelessness, such as prevention, including the integration of legal services, which are definitely needed, housing location, and housing retention services. For those who are already homeless, we have increased street and shelter outreach services with the help of our stimulus fund. The outreach services are now specifically coordinated with permanent housing programs for both adults and young adults. This will help us expand our street-to-home model, which is very successful, which takes people from the street directly to a home with many supports for living within a home. Also, we've increased the number of workforce development, mental health, and substance abuse services, and we will be improving the way we will target our Head Start programming to homeless and at-risk groups. As you can see, we're expanding and adding innovative services through the lens of the Plan to End Homelessness. We hope to learn even more in the coming year through these major initiatives and continue to reduce overall homelessness in the city. The department will continue to provide services to those who are in need. Homelessness is a critical issue, and we continue to work with our private and philanthropic partners to create ways in which we can service those who are without a place to call home. We believe that the additional funding from the stimulus package will help us move closer to our goal of ending homelessness as we know it. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Nancy Radner, who is the CEO of Chicago Alliance to End Homelessness, who's done a tremendous job in not only working with our administration, but also educating the county, the state, the federal government, and bringing all the non-for-profit agencies together in a constructive way to deal with the problem in Chicago and in the metropolitan area. And this plan that they have put together has really been recognized nationally and even internationally, so that people can deal with the problem in their own communities. Nancy?
Wow, that's quite an introduction. Can you hear me? I'm really short. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner Karen. I thank you for this incredible partnership. I'm just going to make a couple of brief remarks here. I want to do a shout out to the city for the incredible partnership that we do have around the Plan to End Homelessness. It's been 6 years of implementing this plan, and the commissioner has been amazing. The mayor has been a visionary and quite a leader. I want to thank the commissioner's wonderful staff, Betsy Benito, Jim Lobianco, Tony Radin, and others who have really worked hard with the Chicago Alliance to make this vision a reality, and we are making progress. So there's 2 points today about how we're making progress, even in light of the economic situation. The one is that we, as the mayor said, it's raining. Okay, there's no question it is raining on the homeless system. We have not had a huge influx of people into our system, which is pretty significant, but we do have fewer vacancies than we've had in the past. So what that means is that there are some more people coming into the system, but we're still able to handle them. What we do have is about an increase of about 50% of phone calls to our homelessness prevention call center. So what that means is that there are many people in this city who are looking at the possibility of homelessness, and that is something that we have to keep a close eye on. And so one of the points of information that I want you to take away today is that the city is using its rainy day funds to ensure that this crisis that is sort of looming on the horizon doesn't hit us hard. And I added up the money, and I think I see it as $4.2 million to the plan and the homeless system over the next several years in the city's projected budgets for the next several years. You guys will have to get them to do the math, but that's kind of what I see. That's a significant amount of money, and that is money that will help ensure that nobody goes without a bed, and that also the priorities of the plan continue. One of the major priorities of the plan, and this is my second point and then I'll end, is to move people off the streets as much as possible. We have a program called Street to Home that the city's been operating and funding, and that program takes people right from the streets and puts them into housing. That program has been very successful. It's been so successful that as of January January of this year, our count is down. Our homeless numbers were down. Now, that's a little bit past tense because it's been a bad year, but I still want to point to those numbers as being significant. Because what we do is every 2 years, we count the number of people who are homeless, both in the shelters and on the streets. We count them on one night, the same night, across the country. Chicago's been using the same methodology to count people who are homeless for the last 6 years. So this is the third count, in a sense, that uses the same methodology. And this count says that we are down 38% in the number of people who are on the streets. Now, numbers are tricky. Numbers are particularly tricky when you're talking about people who are homeless because they don't want to be counted. There is stigma attached to homelessness, and we know that therefore it is very difficult to place a number, to get a name, to get a social security number, but we do our best, and we've done the same every year. So discount some of that 38%, but don't discount it all. What it says is that our plan has been working. Because we have focused on moving people off the streets, we have been successfully moving them off the streets. Now, just in conclusion, I hate to end on a bad note, but a little bit all bets are off now. As I said, we see a crisis looming. We don't want to pat ourselves on the back too much because we just don't know what the next year will bring. Homelessness is a delayed response to the economy. People who've been hanging on. I don't know if you saw the paper this morning in the Sun-Times. Talks about people living in all kinds of places that aren't necessarily habitable for folks. We know that that's occurring. We don't see a lot of it in Chicago, but we know it's occurring. So we are putting this money that the city is putting forth to ensure that a crisis doesn't hit us in a way that we can't handle. And so I thank the city for being visionary on this and for our partnership to end homelessness.